Welcome to the At a Total Loss podcast, where lost moms candidly talk about their experiences with stillbirth that have left them at a total loss for words. It is through our stories that we hope to give you support, motivation, friendship, and maybe a laugh or two. But most importantly, we hope to give you light in the darkest moments of your life. I'm Katherine, a lost mom to my beautiful son Brody, who was born still at 36 weeks on January 18th, 2022. While trying to survive the sadness and find answers as to why he died, I found this community of incredible women willing to share their journey, experiences, and sometimes margaritas so that I didn't feel alone. They helped me survive, and I hope we can do the same for you. So grab some wine and some tissues as we navigate this awful world of stillbirths that has left us all at a total loss.
Okay.
So just like, I probably didn't think this through, but I have no idea how this is going to go, but it's fine. So what's crazy is that we don't have many conversations about this, right? We don't.
Yeah, you might learn something new today.
Oh God, I'm scared. When you ask your husband to do a podcast and he goes, maybe, and you ask what's the hesitation, and he says, I don't want to offend you. I don't know what can you say? But anyway, you've been a key player, obviously, as Brody's father. In the last 7 months have been wild. Our relationship has been wild. We've done a lot in 3 years, and here we are now. And thank you for coming on. If you guys know us personally, you know that I am a woman of many words, and Michael is a man of very few. So we work really well. But so here you are. You ready?
Yeah, as ready as I'm ever going to be. I mean, this is a different experience, getting me, I would say, a little out of my comfort zone. Typically, I'm the one doing the interviewing, so we'll see how this goes.
Well, it's going. Let's go. We're rolling.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I think just to start, the pregnancy from really the beginning and kind of understanding, what we went through, to the end point was it went by really quick, and we did a lot over those, 8 months, whether it be we got engaged, got married, got a house, everything else that goes along with, I would say, just a typical pregnancy, and throw that in there, and let alone it was our first. There was a lot that we had going on, and if I were to really look back, and I haven't spent too much time doing it, one of the things I regret a lot about it was I don't think that we ever stopped to just appreciate the pregnancy itself too much.
Yeah.
In my mind, it was always, once we get to this point, then, we get to relax and, enjoy this. And, I think for us, the biggest point was probably getting a house, which we did in November, and we're all moved in December. And then we got a puppy that came and immediately moved in with us shortly after that, which took up a lot of time and energy. And, it wasn't until really, we got through the holidays there that it finally felt like, all right, now we can enjoy the last month of pregnancy and really enjoy, I think, a lot of the things that, we just hadn't really stopped, or at least I hadn't specifically over the first 8 months there. And, then January 17th happened, and it was kind of over almost before we knew it.
You have to be clear, the 17th is when we found out Brody had died. The 18th is when he was born. So we somehow kind of separate those 2 days a little bit. We don't talk about the 17th much. That was a pretty horrific day, as if you're listening, as you know. Finding out, hearing those words. Unfortunately, Michael was not with me. I ran in. They had some weird policies going on at the time in the office and weren't allowing any support people, which in hindsight, that was ridiculous. And I'll always wish you were with me. But I just ran in real quick and said, everything's fine. I'm just going to get checked out. The movement was minimal to the point that Monday morning I didn't really feel anything. And I felt weird. I felt off. And I said, I'll be right back. I'm going to just go get checked really quick. The nurse, the doctors or the nurse at the office told me to come in there. They did not send me to the emergency room. And now that I'm learning all these things, I probably should have gone directly to the nursing, to the hospital. So Michael dropped me off at the front and I ran up and didn't really think anything. And he sat in the car and waited, even though I was like, go, I'll call you when I'm done. He waited. So I was given the news by myself. And then they said, you need to get your husband up here. And so I had to call him and he came up. And then they informed him of what they had just told me. I think not only was it awful to hear the news, it was also awful hearing it again and watching you take on the news.
Yeah, definitely the most, difficult news that you can receive. And, I think for me throughout the entire pregnancy, for all the visits, I was thankfully able to go in and see the sonograms and hear the heartbeat. I was there for, at least by all measurements that you told me, the important visits. And I think in my mind, I always went into a lot of those visits expecting the worst news. Mm-hmm. Whether it was the initial one and, even though you could hear the heartbeat, it's irregular, it's, off, not as fast as it should be or way too fast. To the anatomy scan, thinking, he's not going to have a leg or, has got a diagnosis that, is going to make the pregnancy not viable. Or I was always kind of prepared for those scenarios. So on January 17th, when I drove you to the doctor, I don't know why I was working from home that day, and I never really thought too heavily about you wanting to go in to see the doctor, because I think for the week prior, maybe even a couple weeks prior, there had been, I feel like, many times where you had concerns. And it was always, you ate a York peppermint patty, or you went and got some food, and, maybe you'd been working out, or, there's always something that you did that, resulted in Brody moving or feeling that things were back to normal. So I didn't think twice about this visit. However, when you called me to come in, that's when I knew something wasn't normal. But, in hearing, all of your other podcasts, I don't think my mind even ever turned to the worst case scenario being he was gone. Mm-hmm. I still thought, okay, maybe the cords are wrapped around his head. We've got to go to the hospital right now. Maybe, he's growing a third hand, I nothing to the point that this was over. There was nothing that we were going to be able to do about it. So going into the room, seeing you immediately, obviously knew something was wrong, and, typically not a good thing when there's, 4 nurses or 4 people in addition to us in there. And yeah, it was in disbelief. You say you remember seeing my face walking in. I'd be curious to hear, what I looked like, how I remember it. But I just remember being in shock. I think I remember asking just to make sure that, could they double check, really just confirm. And, there really just wasn't a discussion at all. It was, we're sorry, yeah. we're sorry. But, how do you remember it going down in terms of visualizing what I went through?
Well, you had a friggin' mask on, so I could only see your eyes. And that was horrible. And I just remember screaming, I'm sorry, because I thought I killed him, Whew, I knew this episode would get me. But I think what happened after that, and it's so interesting what your body and your brain do. I think I went into shock. I think you and I went into go mode, because shortly after that, we were walked into an office where we were handed a pamphlet and saying, you need to wait for us to call you. You have to be induced. And I don't know about you, but I felt like I was swimming. My ears, I couldn't hear. I saw her mouth moving. And then I was like, I have to be induced. because I don't think I ever thought that he would die and then I would have to give birth. So my brain hadn't calculated yet when we found out he was dead. I hadn't processed that yet. Then to immediately process that I have to give birth. I don't know what your brain was doing.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely shocking. I mean, you go from, I'd say being consoled for just a matter of minutes to it becoming a very procedural thing. To your point, handing a pamphlet, being told what the next steps are, but, still trying to digest the news that you had just received. So it all went really quickly. I think I was even in and out of there in less than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It was very quick before the two of us were walking back to the car, trying to contemplate, not just next steps, but really just what the rest of our lives are going to look like.
Oh, yeah.
So, I know for me, and again, I'll probably say this a lot today just because I know just about every guest on your podcast has said something similar, but yeah, stillbirth and, the fact that you still have to give birth was never something that, I thought were connected.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that we were going to have to go to the hospital, you were going to be induced, we were going to physically see Brody was just really shocking. And, his due date was a couple of weeks away, but I definitely wasn't necessarily prepared, just given that, I thought I was going to have those last couple of weeks to really prep for, what those moments would be like.
Because you'd never held a baby before. You wouldn't even hold like my nieces and nephews. No babies. And I was like, we're going to have to change that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we went back home. They didn't have a bed for us immediately at the hospital, which those moments, were just brutal, waiting around, at the house, and, your mom and sister came over, and those moments were, incredibly difficult and rough. And, really from the time that we actually, got to the hospital and got things going, for me personally, it was those moments of silence that were kind of the worst aspects of it. Got handed the pamphlet, and I remember, just not being able to get through a lot of the literature, without breaking down, just having to read kind of some of the, suggestions on how to handle this was incredibly difficult. And again, just not something you ever would expect. But, yeah, in that moment for me and really, the entirety of it, my, focus was always on you. I think for a lot of, unfortunate or stressful or difficult situations, I'd like to say I handle myself fairly well. And being able to put my focus on you, I think, allowed me to do that in this situation. 'Cause, for a lot of this, it was new to us going through all this, but, a lot of it is something that is not even that you're not prepared for, but you just never imagined would be possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, trying to make that as easy as possible on you was obviously my number one goal. And, really, from there, once the ball got rolling in terms of you being induced and going into labor, it all went pretty quickly from there. I know going through labor, I watched a majority of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I try not to think about it, in this moment, probably one of the few times that I've gone back and really thought about it. But, at the time, and we didn't know what was wrong. We didn't know what was, what caused
Mm-hmm.
us to lose him. So I was really scared, watching the delivery.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was times when I definitely looked away because, on top of not knowing what to expect, but, never witnessing a birth before, I'm seeing blood and, when he came out, I thought he was severed in half. I was really shaken up about visually what I saw, and probably being a little too graphic in details, but, I think that's relatively normal for a birth, but it was just something that I didn't know to experience. Like his head seemed like it was a weird shape, and I think that's normal.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. Birth in itself is terrifying and weird and strange, especially for the first time you see it, and then you have that added layer of, but he's dead, and why, and I don't know, and what is he going to look like, and what's going to be coming out during birth. And I think that's valid. I think everybody probably did not, and anybody in the situation probably did not know what to expect, what they were going to see.
Yeah, so for me, that was the big thing, just, not knowing what to expect. And then, I know, you've told me before, kind of those last moments of pushing him out, you didn't want to let go. Mm-hmm. So when he finally was out, I think by then visually I didn't know what to expect. And again, kind of turned my attention back to you, and, a lot of raw emotions in that moment. And for us, one of the big things was we didn't know the sex, so waiting to figure that out. And
which is wild. They did not tell us. Like normally it's like, it's a boy or whatever. They didn't tell us. And so I asked, what is it? And they're like, oh, we don't know. We didn't look. I'm like, what? What is it? And are you sure you want to know? Was like the next question. Why it was treated like that, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that since.
Yeah,
it was weird.
I just think it's so procedural, especially when you're dealing with a difficult situation. I think they're just following their procedure and trying not to let emotions dictate.
Well, our entire team was crying.
What comes into play. And, I know for us, those moments before you got induced, one of the good things that we had to kind of turn to, I think, to pass the time and not take our mind off of it, but just something to keep our minds occupied, was coming up with a name, not knowing the sex and kind of debating down to the two names, whether it be a boy or whether it be a girl. So when we finally did ask and they let us know it was indeed a boy, pretty easy decision, that Brody was going to be the name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We had already decided that, which was awesome. I think we were toying with a middle name, but then when I looked down at him and he looked so much like you, I said he just has to have his dad's name, and we went with Brody Michael. What ensued after that was just, you just kept it together so well. I didn't know what side was up, down, around. I felt out of body, like this wasn't real. Like I'm just going to wake up any minute. And you just seemed to keep it so calm, cool, collected, which was so helpful, even though I think you were probably on the verge of breaking down. So how did you manage to just keep it together so well and make sure that papers, I mean, we're still signing papers. Like they're asking, what do you want to cremate? And I'm like, what? We have to talk about this now? And then I unfortunately had to have emergency surgery. You were signing things for me because I had no idea what was going on. So we were still we still had to be present. And I'm checking out because I'm dying, but you remained present. So how were you able to keep that together?
I think I can internalize emotion pretty well. So for me, I'd point to two different things. I'd say, one, I think I recognized the position that you were in, and one of us, to your point, needed to be able to make decisions, needed to be able to communicate with doctors, and I immediately recognized that that was my role, for lack of a better way of describing it. And you're going through something that's infinitely more difficult than I could ever experience, especially when you throw in the physical aspect of it. So that was the least that I could do.
Thank you so much.
in those moments, and and just emotionally, I think I'm good, especially on my own. If I'm reading things, internalizing in my own head, I can keep my emotions in check. It's when I verbalize them. I said reading the pamphlet out loud. I remember verbalizing instructions to you, and that's where I would have my moments of kind of breaking down and just not being able to get through certain aspects of it. And then they asked us if we were ready to hold him, because that's one of the things that we had to make a decision on about do we want to hold him? Do we want to see him? Do we want to take pictures? Do we want to baptize him? A lot of decisions, again, that you don't really think about, but thankfully the book that we got all recommended that those who didn't typically walk away or have, moments, in the future where they regret doing so. Mm-hmm. So, we made the decision that, anything that they were going to do or offer that we were going to do and take advantage of. And, it started off with holding him. And it took us probably a good, I don't remember how long it was. I was going to say 5 minutes, but it could have been 15 minutes for all I recall of us collecting ourselves emotionally to be at the point where, not only we could physically hold him, but look at him. Mm-hmm. So that was tough to the point that you made. I'd never held a baby before in my life. Probably 10 months maybe is I would say the youngest I've ever had experience.
Not a newborn, obviously, yeah.
Experience with. So, that was difficult. But I'm, thankful that Brody will always get that designation as getting me over that barrier and
thanks, Brody,
being that first experience for me. But the emotions were all over the place from there. Thankfully, had your mother and your sister in the room during the delivery. Then we had the chaplain come and do a baptism, which I think everyone was bawling their eyes out at that point. So don't remember too much of it. And then we're able to get the grandparents in and
your parents,
both sets of grandparents in the door, and got our priest from our church then came in several hours later and did another baptism, a more formal one. But we unfortunately did not get to take part of that because shortly after Brody was born, it was immediately another emergency pertaining to you specifically. So again, all the focus kind of switched back over to you, and it kind of was a whirlwind from there of making sure that at that point we didn't lose you too. Everything that we need to do to make sure that, at that point, the two of us were walking out together.
Yeah, I was just looking up, trying to say the right word. I mean, DIC is what happened. So I pretty much hemorrhaged and had to get blood transfusions, which immediately went into an issue of they couldn't stop the bleeding. So only thing I remember is the doctor saying, you were standing next to me. You had my right hand, and she was like, hey, can you please move? There were like 30 doctors and nurses. And she goes, we have to take you to surgery. And she's like, one of three things is going to happen in that surgery. She's like, one, I'm going to stop the bleeding. Two, I'm going to have to take your uterus. Or three, I'm not going to be able to stop anything. And I'm like, excuse me? I'm laughing now because I almost sat straight up. Meanwhile, I'm on tubes and everything. And I'm like, you're going to wake me up and we're going to discuss this. And she was like, no, we're not. And she's like, this is life and death. She's like, here's a pen, you have to sign. And my hands, remember they had pumped me full of like fluids. My hands were like the sausage, the Michelin man. And I couldn't hold the pen. You're like, we're not having this conversation. And you just signed it. You were like, no. And I will never forget you just taking control and saying, no, it's your life now. We have to make sure you make it through this. So your strength in that moment was fantastic. And that's what got me through it. It really, truly was. And you didn't leave me the entire time I was in the hospital. You stayed there for the 4 days and slept on those terrible things. So you just not leaving, you staying and just being my eyes and ears was really important. Not only just being there for me, but they're coming in and they're administering drugs and they're like doing all these things. They're asking you questions. And I still don't know what's going on. So that was really awesome that you were there and you stayed there. Which I was like, go home for a second, go walk for a walk, go get a shower. And you're like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, obviously, with COVID and everything going on, made it maybe a little bit more interesting than it typically would be.
Forgetting that, yeah.
But yeah, thankful that we were able to get a lot of people in there. For your parents, not necessarily the first grandchild. My parents, their first grandchild. So very thankful that they got to be in Brody's presence and got to hold him and get a couple pictures with him. And yeah, I mean, it was hard. I bring it back to COVID. When you were in surgery, it was just me in a room all by myself with Brody for probably about 2 hours, I would say. Just waiting for.
I didn't know that.
Waiting for updates. Yeah.
Wow, just waiting for updates?
It's kind of crazy looking back on it, and you're not going to realize a lot of this, but for all of the intense moments that you went through, Brody was always in the corner of the room throughout the whole thing, just lying there.
Yeah, he was in there the whole time.
Yeah, when you were in surgery, it was just the two of us, which it was nice, obviously, to get that additional time with him. I think we bonded in a way, if you will, during those moments. But it was important for me because, I said at the beginning everything about how the pregnancy went by really quickly and didn't necessarily take the time to stop and appreciate the moments of it. But, even after, someone gives birth to a living child, I feel like, I heard many times it takes, a mother has an instant connection with the child. They've been living inside of the womb. A father, it takes months usually before you really start to feel a bond with the child. So I felt like I got that to a certain degree in that moment because for the most part before that, I didn't know Brody from, anybody, other than what you would tell me.
And that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You feel some kicks, but, you come to me, Brody likes strawberries. I don't know Brody likes strawberries. Like I don't have a way of judging that. Or Brody's really active today. He must have a lot of energy. Okay, you tell me, so I believe you. But that bond isn't something that I physically innately feel like you got to experience. So it was nice to have those moments, and something that. If we hadn't, I don't know if I would feel as much at peace with what happened. But
I want to you said at peace. I remember the last day when we got to say goodbye to him. You did say to me, "I'm at peace right now with this," which was wild to me because I felt at that moment I would absolutely never have peace. So tell me why you kind of felt that, and then in the days that ensued, where did that feeling come from? And has it been challenging to watch me struggle with finding peace with it? In the very beginning, let's say that.
So I've always wanted and known I've wanted kids from as far as I know, wanted to be a dad. So a lot of that, I would say, goes into my why. People always ask, what's your motivation? What's your why? What drives you to want to be your best version of yourself, this, that. And for me, like, I know I verbalized this before, but I know in the back of my head, it was always like, oh man, like when I have kids, like, look out, like, I'm going to have my why. So when we got to have that additional time with him, I owed it to Brody for his purpose of being a part of not only our journey, but my journey. He was my why. And even if he wasn't living, I couldn't take that away from him. And in realizing that, I had my peace.
That makes a lot of sense. I didn't know that. I think that's so interesting that was, you came to that so quickly after having that time with him, when it takes us probably, my gosh, so much longer. But that is the ultimate message. That's what this is. I remember at the time not even being mad at you for saying that. Like, we've never had a point of me disagreeing with how you're grieving or you disagreeing with how I'm grieving. I feel like I was almost envious of that. That's so weird. I don't know if I've thought about this. I was almost like, how did you do that? How did you do that? I'm so angry. I'm so upset. I'm so crushed. I'm so mad. I'm so devastated. I did spend more time with him, technically, because he grew in my belly. You know that. You had less time with him, but you still loved him as much as I did. So I'm happy that I didn't view that as how could you move on so quickly? That's not at all what you meant. And I don't think by any means you've moved on from him. Being at peace with the fact that you have a child in heaven and you're still his parent, I think that makes so much sense. I dig that. Lazar, you're a deep cat.
You just said your name.
Huh?
Said your name.
My name?
Yeah.
My last name?
Lazar, cat. Cat Lazar.
Laser cat. So, well, it started getting worse from there, I'd say. I mean, we went into the depths of hell after that. We went home to a bunch of food and a bunch of people kind of texting weird things. And we're not really... Talk to me about your mind frame, your emotions. Where were you at in the days after we got home?
Yeah, for me, and you might view this as controversial, maybe, but
Oh God.
for me, like January 18th, the day that Brody's birthday, or maybe even the 17th, when we found out he didn't have a heartbeat, was by all measurables, the worst day of our lives, if you want to put it. Mm-hmm. And that was hard. I think the days after, and I think there have been moments after that have been infinitely harder than getting that news, because getting that news was devastating. But to your point, like, you have an outer body experience where you really you can't even compute the emotions that are going through, and there was so much that then needed to take place, where the moments after we got home from the hospital and the weeks after, I mean, they punch you in the mouth, and I think you didn't get up too quickly. Those were a lot harder, and I think just kind of comparing and contrasting a little bit what you went through versus what I went through. Is you had all the physical stuff on top of just the emotional damage that had just occurred. So again, my focus was always on you, because I knew just from being myself and going through nothing like this, but just knowing how I handle difficult situations, I knew I could handle it. I knew I could handle anything that came of it and make it through. And I wasn't confident necessarily, in that for you. Not to say that, you weren't, but
Valid.
Not to say that you were gonna, kill yourself or anything, but you were closer to that than you were to being able to resume life before January 17th. So, again, just doing everything that I could to keep you from not only being in a dark place, but making it a darker space. Was incredibly important to me. So, we were very blessed to have all the family come, spend significant amount of time. Thankfully, had a meal train started, which was great, not to have to worry about those types of things. But I think some of the difficult parts, for me for sure, and I know you went through this as well, was just every single time someone texted or every single time someone called, it was like you have to go through just the whole emotions all over again. And that was pretty difficult to go through. I even remember in like the hospital feeling like I got to a good moment of my, having my emotions in check, and someone would text me like, hey, like, prayers coming your way. And that was difficult. Like, I know people are doing the right thing, but it was just like this. It just brings you back to the emotions that you felt like you just had gotten control over. So we really kind of were in a bubble for the most part from the outside world, outside of those texts or people coming through the door. And one emotion that I would say I'm curious if you felt this way, because I know I did to a certain degree, and it's kind of silly to feel, but there's a feeling of like almost shame and embarrassment to a certain degree of bringing in the family and the friends, where you didn't do anything wrong, but you build up all these expectations of what your life's going to be, and have that come crashing down. It's devastating. And I know, like, for me personally, bringing it to my parents with that being their first grandchild, it's like, again, like it sucked for me, and I can deal with my own emotions. Like, I'm the CEO of that. But when I start thinking about like my parents and like, oh man, like they, didn't get them a grandchild here in this situation, that's where it really hits me and was really hard. And again, it sounds silly to say, and I'd be curious about your opinion of it, but I know in those first couple of weeks, those were some of the emotions that really kept, I would say, the feeling of wanting to just live in the bubble of those who just experienced what we experienced in that first couple of days.
Yeah, I think mine was more along the anger, along the, please don't send me your condolences with a box of friggin' muffins. You have no frickin' clue what this is like. You will never know what this is like. And I didn't want to explain it to people. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to say the words out loud. It was more like, I don't want your pity. And I don't really truly remember a lot, to be honest with you, until maybe 3 months. And then I was kind of functioning, and I'm putting air quotes. Yeah, the sadness that, I'd always envisioned finally coming home from the hospital with our new babe and sitting there with the family coming by, everyone personally bringing stuff over and not just sending it because they didn't want to see us because they didn't know what to say, but having the family together around this beautiful home that we had purchased, and, having everyone hold the baby and drinking that first glass of wine I didn't have for almost 9 months, like just enjoying the new baby, bringing him home. And the fact that image was so violently different was really, really hard to swallow. That the reality that we had envisioned. I think I even got so upset and so mad I yelled at the grandparents to clean out the nursery, like break down the crib. I don't want to walk in there and see a nursery. And they did. To this day, I regret that. I wish the crib was still up. I do. It took me like probably 5 months to regret that. But I was just mad. I was very mad. And we had no answers. So my goal then was to, when I came up for air, was to try to get some answers. And I go back to the texts that I sent to other lost moms. And I was like, what was my brain doing? I was like, oh, this happened for a reason. God has a plan, and all these wild things. It's just not accurate. Oh, I'm so strong. No, it's not it. That's not it at all. So that I would say the first couple weeks right after, I don't know who we were. You and I, though, like, I was very codependent. Kind of still am.
We haven't spent more than 12 hours apart in 8 months.
You guys, I've never been like this in my whole life. And I feel better because one of my other lost mom friends texted me the other day. She's like, oh my God, I'm away from my husband for like 3 nights. I've never been away from him this long in a year. And it's okay though. Like, you were the reason I was functioning. You literally helped me get up off the couch. You helped change me. You helped get me in the shower. You helped me physically do things that I couldn't do just because of obviously surgery and stuff, but I emotionally was completely gone. And me, I'm going, we're newlyweds. You shouldn't be seeing all this stuff. But the privacy was out the window. You didn't judge. You saw some stuff too. And we've somehow managed to take that part of our lives and try to like maybe, I don't know, decompartmentalize it. Like, I don't know if you were were you that affected by the things that you saw?
Anything that was physically related to you, no. Again, I'm your husband. Comes
Forever,
with the territory,
baby. So here's what I want to go into this now, because I should have booked more time, but I'm reactive to a lot of things. You are not. So what has it been like seeing my reaction to how people have treated us or treated me, or the things that people did and said? You've always said that you disagreed with some of the valid points that I had about people. So I kind of want your perspective on that.
I've got a low expectation for people.
It's a great,
I don't know. I
thing
mean,
to
years
have.
ago, I think the easiest way to not be disappointed by somebody is just to have low expectation of most. So, the people that I have high expectations for are the ones that I know from the past I can consistently rely on for them to come through for me.
Right.
So I had zero expectation of anybody reaching out, anybody sending anything, anybody doing anything. So even if it wasn't sent at the right time and it took me months to respond, I still ultimately infinitely appreciate anybody that did anything as small as, send a text, write a letter, came to our house to drop something off. I mean, I had friends fly in. I had friends literally pretty much break into our house.
Yeah, broke in.
Not wasn't letting anyone in, didn't want to see anybody, and had a buddy that just somehow was on the couch when I came downstairs one day. And again, it just, I had no expectation, and I was blown away by over the top by what anybody did. And I know you have a different view on some of the gestures.
This is what I'm getting at. At any point, you didn't really look at me and say, you're being irrational or you shouldn't feel that way. You didn't do that. You let me feel the way that I feel. When I asked your perspective, you did give it to me in a gentle way, which I think is really important. This is the point I want to try to make is I'm emotional. I got hormones. I'm postpartum. I don't have a baby. My body thinks I do. My brain is in trauma fog. I'm nuts. And you didn't at any point be like, you shouldn't feel that way, which was really helpful because it let me get through my own emotions. We would talk it out. So I appreciate you doing that. I really do. And I think, though, there were maybe a couple times that you were like, you may have been like, no. You can't say that. You can't do that. And I listened because you didn't say that about everything. There was a line in the sand and you made me take a step back and really think and take a deep breath before I reacted to anybody. And truthfully, that's how everybody should be. You shouldn't react so crazy. So I'd put the phone down. I'd turn it on silent. I would not even go through the mail. I wouldn't open any presents. I mean, we forget we had baby shower gifts still showing up because we had a baby shower right before he died. And things that we had that were back ordered were still so I would have to take a pause and not flip out. Just because he died didn't mean in the first few months, I'm good. Okay, the trenches, guys, is the first 3 months. Anything after that, anything in that time, all hell, chaos, psycho, circus, fine. Anything after that, when you start coming up for air, I think you kind of have to kind of look at your surroundings and kind of consider what's happening around you. So this shifted our entire lives. It really did. It changed it. Day-to-day stuff. What was your game plan like in the morning? Because I know that as a lost mom, we're up and down all day. So I guess
let's just talk about maybe some of the differences, and I think it kind of intertwines with your question about like how I reacted differently to maybe how you reacted, and never telling you specifically that your reaction was wrong. And I think a lot of that goes to I recognize pretty quickly that I just have to be able to pivot and stay on my toes with your emotions and your reactions, because if you were having a good day, I wanted to make sure I stayed out of your way to keep it a good day. If you were having a bad day, sometimes me getting involved could only make it worse. And I don't say like I was out of the house, like left you alone. It's just like I wasn't going to suggest anything outside of the normal course of the day.
Just want to tell you guys, we didn't fight. Like, it sounds like I was storming around the house, throwing things, screaming. We didn't fight at all. And I think that's why, because you kind of just stayed away from me. But that was probably a good game plan.
Yeah, because, after the first, 2-3 months, there was times where, you lament, I'm in this house all day. You leave to go to work or you leave to go to the gym. Like, this is the last place that I want to be. I need to be out. I need to be doing things. And so, okay, let's go to dinner. Let's go to a concert. And as soon as we get there, it's a wave of a wall of emotion of, why did you bring me out here? There's triggers everywhere. I need to get out of here. So the art of the pivot was super important. It still is.
The art of the pivot. Ugh. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good.
At any point, okay, so I'm going to ask you some questions, okay? At any point, did you say, enough, you got to get over this? In your head, you never said that to me.
I don't think so. If I were to go as far as to say enough, it might be just with chasing after what happened. But I think naturally that's something that you'll never be able to turn off. I think that's one big difference between the two of us. And again, I'll go back to just kind of recognizing kind of my place in this whole thing. And I think that's something that just works with our dynamic of just having differences, and that's what makes a relationship good. There's yin and yang of, I think from after this occurred with Brody, and especially the next couple of weeks or months, you were all focused on the past. Mm-hmm. My focus was always forward thinking and on the future. And I don't think we could have both been focusing on the past, because I think we would have dwelled there, maybe where we would still be stuck there. There was only room for one of us to really dig into and have, I would say, an over amount of emotion towards what happened. Mm-hmm. My goal was not moving on, but getting to the point where I was comfortable not having an answer might be the best answer. And I know you were not comfortable with that, mm-hmm. and wanted to know specifically what had occurred.
Because I blamed myself. Did you ever blame me?
Never once.
Thank God. We wouldn't be sitting here. No, I'm just kidding.
And I hope I verbalized that to you. I don't know if I have, based on that question.
You did not miss a beat. I think in the very beginning, I apologized profusely. I'm so sorry I killed him. I did it. It was me. I did something. I ate something. I drank something. I moved wrong. I laid wrong. It was me. And my body failed me. And I'm so sorry. And you were just like, you got to stop. You did not do this. You never wavered on that.
Yeah, I never had those thoughts, and definitely didn't want you to think that I was having those thoughts. I mean, I know you were going as far as to say, you can leave me. This isn't the life you signed up for. This isn't the first year of marriage you envisioned. Like, you're better off finding somebody else. And
I did say it. Maybe it was.
Don't be so tough on yourself. Don't make up negative stories.
That's what we do now.
I wasn't thinking that.
That's just a testament to how, like, after this happens, you just think the worst. Like, you're just like, okay, he's probably going to leave now and this is going to happen. And then I became very, very scared of you just, like, leaving the house, like, dying on me. Because that happens to us. But you have really done a phenomenal job. And I say job, but how do you feel that you have properly mourned and you've properly gotten your feelings out? Because I know I dragged you to therapy and I was like, you have nothing to say, I know it, but I just want you to sit here and just in case you can chime in. But you were always like, I really don't have much really to say.
Yeah, again, I was always pretty forward thinking. Like, I remember when we went to therapy the first time, they had us fill out like kind of sheets of what we wanted to go over or what was important to discuss, or I think specifically like what are the things that are bothering you or stressing you out. And like yours, again, we're all viewpoint in the past, things about Brody, things that happened, things in the moments of the birth that weren't necessarily big emphasis or stress points for me. Mine were all financial. Mine were all forward thinking, because at this point, I don't know if there is something wrong, how expensive it's going to be to make sure it doesn't occur again. I don't know if we're doing IVF next time. I don't know if we're doing adoption. Those things cost money. So for me, it was all forward thinking in that space. So I enjoyed therapy. I think it was good for the times that you wanted me there to hear, I think, a lot of what you were saying.
Yeah, it was a grief counseling. So I just wanted to make sure that you had a proper outlet if you needed it to talk to somebody or voice how you feel.
My outlets for me were really, I would say 3 things, if I had to say so. And it was probably working out, and maybe music. And work was my bubble because I only had told a couple of people that you were even pregnant, and I had let them know an emergency had come up. I was going to need some time, appreciate the privacy, but I took a week, and then I was right back to it for the most part, working from home. And for me, that was my escape because nobody knew what had happened. The few that might have known weren't asking about it, which was great to be able to enter a world every single day where not that I'm forgetting about what had happened with Brody, but I didn't have to worry about it. My mind was not thinking about it, and I could focus all of my energy on that, which was great. Same thing with working out. The brutal thing about what you went through, obviously, is you couldn't work out. Working out is a big part of our lives and an important part of keeping us in a good mental state. So it was good to be able to get back into the gym. After the first couple of weeks, I think I returned to the gym. And then music as well was something that I turned to suppress or enhance emotions just based off of the music that I was listening to. And I know you had a completely different take on it where, hey, did you listen to the release radar on Spotify this week? And even if you wanted to, you couldn't bring yourself to listen to music.
Mm-mm. So I think why this works is because I recognize that in you, that these were not you escaping me. These were just an outlet for you to have some peace and not have to deal or worry about questions or address it, because every time you got home, it was consistently addressing things, whether it was mail coming or phone calls or texts or me or family there. It was 24/7. So I was never really like offended about the things that you would do. Like I would say, go to the gym, even though I can't go. You need it. You need to get out of here for a little bit. Go. And in turn, I think that you let me feel the way that I feel about things, like get the music away from me, podcasts only, and you weren't like, hey, you need to get over and listen to this song. We never pushed our own feelings on each other. And I think that's why it works. And kind of saw the other one for what they needed at the time. Because no matter what, I'm going to be Brody's mother, but first I'm your wife, I'm your best friend, I'm your partner. And I knew that I still had to show up and be this and maybe I was altered, maybe I'm different, but our relationship is everything. And I needed to make sure that I showed up for that, not only to make this, to honor Brody, our child, our son, and continue in a loving relationship, but because I love you and I respect you, and it helped me kind of say, he needs to be happy. I want to help him. I want to get through this together. And that was really important for me to do that. And we've made it this far in the shittiest situation that anybody could be in. So, I mean, do you want to leave everyone with something? Do you want to say something to lost dads or lost partners?
Yeah, I can.
Any final words?
Yeah, I mean, hitting on the time in the hospital, I would say make sure to take your time with all the decisions. It seemed silly at the time of taking, professional photos or even just spending time with him. But it's important because that's the only time you're going to get. And I know we talk frequently about regrets of not having certain pictures, and it just seems so silly to smile in a picture with your dead child in your hands. But that's now all I crave, is like a happy picture with him. Mm-hmm. So take your time with that, and for the parts afterwards, you just throw all the scheduling out the window. The expectation of what our life was going to be is over at that point.
What is your advice for lost parents going through this?
Be patient with each other.
That's it. Don't give up.
I love you for who you were, who you are, and who you're going to be.
Oh, babe. I love you too. Thanks for doing this. You good?
Yeah.
Let's go get a drink.
That's all for this episode of the At a Total Loss podcast. If you'd like to help other lost moms benefit from our stories, please share, rate, and comment wherever you are listening. Thank you for being the strong mama that you are. And remember, when things have you at a total loss, we're here to help you find the light in the darkness. Take care, lost moms.